100 Thieves versus Cloud9 for the semifinals. This one is going to be a pretty banger matchup. I think realistically, both teams have a bit of strengths that don't attune to the other team in terms of exactly their entire play style. But first, we have to go back to the series that both teams previously played before, which is Cloud9 series against TSM, was just a complete nail biter, right? It went all to 5 games, and Blaber, I think, is still getting punished very heavily for his early aggressive plays. He seems to be very desynced with the team, especially Perks being desynced with Blaber. That's maybe it's going to play a crucial role within this entire series against 100 Thieves. Now, game 1 was a fucking slaughter, and TSM just completely, rolled over Cloud9. And then game 2, there was a desynced play at Herald, which resulted in 2 deaths. It was at 8 minutes and 40 seconds. And this type of thing can't happen against better teams or teams that are just going to snowball that advantage way hard, right? And Cloud9, I want to remember a play where they engaged at Elder and get completely poked out by Varus. They actually toggled aggro too much to where, the Elder Dragon resets. And so it went back into the pit, forcing Cloud9 to have to go into the pit when that's where Varus kept fucking chunking the shit out of him because he was behind the pit. So if that didn't happen, if they juggled, aggro properly and they were mindful of that, and I know that it's easy to kind of get to lose track of, but that shouldn't happen, in a professional game. Like, you guys should be communicating about aggro and how you want to play that, and be mindful exactly of how it's going to reset. I think that's a very easy thing to consider. So I want to jump over to 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid, because I think Santorin completely outclassed Closer, and we all remember that sick engagement from Core JJ in game 1 on his rel. That shit was a banger, completely caught 100 Thieves off guard, and they kind of seem a little bit uncoordinated as well. You look at game 2 where Team Liquid got cute with the Sejuani pick, of course, and then the Vayne came out from 100 Thieves, and that was kind of a cute pick too, to be honest, to be the tank killer. So we could see that Reaper still has that flexibility to get cute. It's just hopefully he doesn't do it too crazy, or he doesn't initiate it, I guess. That would be the better phrasing. But otherwise, yeah, if he's able to, bring up the counters and whatnot and say, hey, you guys should be playing this, then yeah, more power to him. I feel like that is one of what Reaper's strengths would be. Now, additionally, Closer also did get Diana as well too. And then game 3, you had there was this second fight at Rift Herald, which got me concerned about 100 Thieves specifically, because you could see how uncoordinated 100 T are, because FBI's Tristana had jumped in super hard into TL, and then Jensen just popped him because he's on LeBlanc, and then at 20 minutes, there was also a mid lane fight where Abadage ults himself, and he's Lissandra, right? So he claws his way forward onto Tactical, ults himself, and essentially baits his entire team, because his entire team's just like, oh, you're going to ult the shit out of Tactical, and then we're going to kill him. But no. So Tactical is able to flash out, and then Team Liquid just wrecked the fucking team fight, and that's basically when they win the game, right? So I think there's definitely certain flaws about both of these teams. One, in the fact that it seems like Cloud9 is desynced from the mid and the jungle, as well as in the early game itself when it comes to skirmishing. Now, 100 Thieves, they seem to be desynced on their mid-game plan and just team fights in general, or objectives in general. They just seem to not really understand exactly what teammate is in position to do what play at the time when they're kind of, toggling in terms of aggression against the other team. So let's go lane by lane, of course, classically. It's going to be Someday versus Fudge. Not giga one-sided, I would say, but still in favor of Fudge. I think Fudge is just looking much, much better. And Someday, this has been like one of his worst seasons, I want to say. You can see that Someday seems to have an over reliance on both the Gnar, which, we saw him play quite a ton, and then also Renekton. That's been like his only good pick throughout this entire season. So it's a little bit disappointing. And I think Someday also got completely stomped by Fudge. By Alfari. So I would actually give this edge over into Fudge. Like not an insane amount, nothing to fucking write home about, but a significant advantage. I think Fudge is just performing better recently. Let's go to the jungle. So we have Closer versus Blaber. Two very aggressive junglers, I think. Obviously, Blaber being the more aggressive one. Now, what's going to be interesting here is both the priority on Diana and Lee Sin. I think this is in both of their wheelhouses. Diana more so for Closer, and then both of them for Lee Sin. And then on top of that, you have kind of this weird X factor of Closer's Viego is just better. So that's something that you don't want to give over to 100 Thieves if you're just looking at this, from a stylistic matchup if you're Cloud9. Now, 100 Thieves, or Closer, in fact, can force Blaber into Olaf, which then, that may sound like a bad idea at first because, Blaber's Olaf is sick, but it does give you more of a predictable outcome of how their team comp is going to go in terms of that. So, you could always use that as to where you push them into a corner to where it forces their team comp to go in a certain direction. So that's something to keep in mind. But overall, I give it to Closer. I just think he's performing better, especially when you consider the mid lane synergy that, Cloud9 has issues of, which, speaking of that, it's going to be Abbedagge versus Perks. Perks is completely desynced from Blaber. It's like they're playing two different fucking games. It's so weird, and I feel like it's because maybe Blaber's calling for these plays and Perks is saying, no, or I can't come at that time or whatnot. And then Blaber just does his own shit anyways. And it ends up costing the team a lot. So with that, I think as such, I think Abbedagge wins in this factor. But you do also have to get your wins in early against Perks because Perks' clutch factors is legitimately a concern. Like everyone says, there's like a pseudo clutch factor that, you can't really measure or whatnot. You can basically fucking measure Perks' clutch factor. It is real. It is a tangible thing, basically, that you can touch. So you're going to have to be concerned with that as the games go on, especially if you don't get wins early. That's going to be a concern. So overall, I give the advantage to Abbedagge. I just think he's performing better as well, too, especially in consideration of the 2v2. That's the more significant part. Otherwise, I don't really think it's a big deal. If it were just a 1v1 and whatnot, I think they're both performing at a decent high level, but it seems like Cloud9 is dropping the ball in terms of the mid jungle synergy. FBI Huhi versus Sven and Vulcan. FBI does not look that great. We saw a fantastic performance by Sven over, in their series against TSM. And so, but with that, you had 100 Thieves series against fucking Team Liquid, and FBI did not look good. Like I said, the whole Tristana play, jumping in, just it seems like he's a little bit off center, and it might be because there are the mixed calls within the team fights and whatnot. So I would hold that against FBI specifically. And Sven is looking back in form. I mean, like we all saw that fucking Jin game that was really sick. He played phenomenally. So really, I give that entire advantage to to Sven and Vulcan. I think they're playing really well, actually, and it's just the rest of the map that is kind of falling apart around them, so to speak. But, they're like holding the glue together. Now, how does 100 Thieves win? Punish mid lane. For sure, right? Because as I said before, the desynced, jungle and mid synergy, it's just not there. I would say keep Blaber off of aggro picks like Lee Sin, Diana, Jing Zhao, if you can. Not saying that all of that is actually right, because that's all just jungle picks. So, and then also see if you can sneak a Renekton pick. That would be really sick if you could do that, because that basically guarantees that someday is going to stomp. So if you can somehow do that, totally go for it. Totally, I would say if you can design your entire draft just around that, I'd say do it. Totally. And then as for the last thing, punish their desynced early calls. It's very clear that Cloud9 have a problem in the early game. So if you can create as much mayhem as possible in the very early game, you should do that. You should absolutely go for that. I think that's Cloud9's weakness. Funnily enough, because, Cloud9 is known for their early game or whatnot. But I think that's where they're actually the weakest, and they brush it up as, the game progresses. And as long as they aren't in too big of a deficit, their mid and late game calls are actually really good. So now, how does Cloud9 win? I think just play aggro top. Don't give them Renekton, and you could play it out from there. I think Fudge is just performing way better. And then if you give an early advantage bot lane, as Cloud9, say Blaber goes down there for one gank, or even zoning off 2 waves or something, you should be completely fine. I think Sven and Vulcan are playing really well, and as long as you give them a little bit of an advantage, I think they're going to perform way better when it comes to the mid and late game, just because, as I said, I think Cloud9 are actually the better team when it comes to that. Which then brings me to my last point, which is don't int early plays. It's just as simple as that. If someone says that they can't come to a crab fight, don't fight the crab. Herald, same thing. So it's just very simple. I think Cloud9 has much more simple win conditions. Overall, I'm gonna vote this for, I think Cloud9 are going to get a 3-1. Cloud9 just have the winning bot lane and the winning top lane. Mid, yeah, sure, it's a bit iffy in terms of that, but as long as they can at least make a truce momentarily to say, okay, if I can't go to these certain objectives, do not go for them. Just make a hard stance, make a band-aid stance for now, because it's clear that they just can't solve it for some reason, and there's some miscommunication between those two players. So just make a truce and just hold it off. And I think if they do that, this will be a very easy series for them. I think they will drop a game just because of that miscommunication, like I said before. So, but otherwise, I give this entire series to Cloud9.